denizens of the night. Welcome to another episode of the macabre, the terrifying. Broadcasting live from the Bates Motel, I will be your guide through the witching hours. Tonight, I'm sensing an urban legend vibe in the air. Our scene opens as our protagonist, a young lady, is driving out to a trailhead to begin a multi-day hike during spring break. Her plan is to make the drive all in one day, stay at a motel overnight, and then begin the long trek the following day. Ha ha! I see the horror aficionados among you perked up when I mentioned urban legend-style horror and motels. Well, let's just say that there's a reason these rooms are so cheap, and there's always a vacancy. This story is called I Spent the Night in a Small Town and Don't Think I Can Ever Go Back, and was written by Moonscar Island.
Several days ago, I left the Washington Peninsula for the Cascades and planned on hiking part of the Pacific Crest Trail over spring break. I had loaded up my car with my backpack, a little more than enough food, hiking poles, a first aid kit, and my grandfather's old revolver. The pistol was an 8-shot 22 LR, which isn't much, but it made me feel safe. Most people fear meeting wild animals on the trail, and I don't blame them. I've had my fair share of encounters with bears, and I know if I never run into a bear again, it would be too soon. But every time, that bear would look at me like I wasn't even there. My revolver wouldn't do anything against a bear or cougar except make them mad, but that's because it's not for them. The wildlife isn't what worries me. I can count on one hand how many people in my state have been attacked by bears and cougars in the last 10 years. It's the others that scare me. Most animals don't kill for fun. This was also the first time I would be hiking for this long, all alone. Between the weather, the remoteness, and the terrain, anything can happen, and nobody will be around to hear me scream. If I got stuck, the best chance I would have at rescue would be to shoot my gun and hope someone hears it. Though I've never heard a gunshot and thought I should try to find the shooter. I had left my home late and headed east. The drive from the coast to the trailhead was about 5 hours. The plan was to drive most of the way, stay overnight in an inn, and drive another 20 minutes to the trailhead in the morning. Throughout the drive, I had an uneasy feeling that wouldn't go away. It was like I had forgotten something. I went through the mental checklist of everything in my pack and tried to recall every campsite I booked. At stoplights, I would rummage through my bag blindly to see if everything felt like it was there. It wasn't until I needed to try my GPS on that I realized I didn't know where I was staying that night. In the confusion of making sure I had everything for the hike, I forgot to book reservations. I thought about parking at the trailhead, sleeping in my car, and starting in the morning, but I was already married to the idea of the inn. The plan to sleep in a decent bed and then eat my last real breakfast at a diner just before I started my adventure sounded so nice that I couldn't pass it up. The mountain town I planned to stay at was small enough that I knew it did not see enough outsiders to fill all its vacancies. How I wish I were wrong. The rain had begun to pick up as I entered town. The water slushed under my tires, and my wipers squeaked. I tried to see through the windshield, but my astigmatism was making it a blurry mess. I squinted my eyes and looked around, trying to find any vacancy signs. Just as this town's one road exited and the mountains began again, I saw it. a motel sign that read vacancy in red glowing neon through the falling rain. I hung a quick left and parked up front. I turned off my headlights, grabbed my pack, and headed to the office. I tried dodging raindrops as I ran toward the building and quickly knocked on the door. The light from the office could be seen through the small curtained window. I cupped my hands against the window and tried to see inside. A wooden chair squeaked across the floor, and heavy footsteps started after it. The thumping and dragging of wet rain boots grew closer and closer to the door. I heard the sound of a turning lock and backed away from the door, trying not to break my nose. The door creaked open, and a nervousness began to form in my stomach. I looked back to my car and wondered if I could run to it in time. "Hello," a voice began. I shot back around to see an old lady standing in the doorway. She had on an old flowery dress, the kind with ruffles around the shoulders and long sleeves. Underneath, she wore one size too large rubber rain boots with fresh mud. A beaded chain hung from her glasses, and she seemed healthy for her age. She looked at me and smiled. "Well, you're a pretty young thing. Are you looking for a room?" she continued. She smiled and waited for my response. Despite the age of her dress, it was well kept, same with her overall appearance. Even what I could see of the office looked antiquated, with its wooden panel walls and glass hurricane lamps, but still clean and dusted. This woman's smile was different. The smell of her breath hit me when she first spoke. It looked like her teeth were rotting out of her mouth. Her gums had turned black in some areas, and several teeth looked loose. I held it in and swallowed, not wanting to be rude. "Yes," I said, "just the night." "That's wonderful, sweetie," she said. I looked around at the empty road and trees surrounding the inn. The lack of light allowed me to see stars through the gaps in the clouds. "We don't get many visitors around here." I stepped inside, and the old lady snuck behind the desk. I waited for a moment as she got everything ready. My eyes began to wander and examine the office. Across from the front desk were two large leather chairs. A small table stood between them, and a doily and stained glass lamp atop it. On the walls were wooden planks straight out of the 70s and decorative hurricane lamps. What most caught my attention were all the stuffed animals. A deer head above the chairs, stuffed ducks, elk antlers, and all other manner of wild game, even a stuffed salmon above the front desk. I'm not unfamiliar with taxidermy, but this seemed excessive. It wasn't a hunting cabin. The rain was still falling hard, and I saw the black of the moonless night through the window. A loud thump came from behind me. I turned to see the old lady had pulled out a massive and even older-looking logbook. She cracked open the book about halfway, and the dust it kicked up made me cough. The old lady licked her fingers and started thumbing through the pages. The book was spun towards me, and she pointed to the next blank space. "Write your name and date here, sweetie," she instructed. She waved a pen attached to a chain in front of me. I took it and looked at the page. The last person to stay here was Evelyn Black, and the sign-in date read October 30th, 2008, and the sign-out read October 31st, 2008. I hesitated, trying to figure out how many years that was when I heard the old lady cough. I took that as a cue and wrote my name and sign-in date into the book. The old lady closed the book and told me it was $45 for the night. I thought it was strange to charge me on check-in, but I obliged and handed her the cash. Behind her was a wall of hanging keys, and she grabbed the one marked Room A1. The old lady moved from behind the counter and showed me to my room. The old lady led me outside into the first room after the front office. The key slid into the lock, and she opened the door. The smell of mildew and musk hit me instantly. It didn't surprise me, though, with our wet weather and a vacant motel. I walked inside and put my pack down on the bed. I walked back to thank the old lady at the door when I noticed no way to lock it from the inside. "Oh, you must be from the city, sweetie," the old lady responded. "Out here, we don't use locks because I know everybody and everybody knows me," she continued. I was taken aback, unsure of how to answer. I'd never come across a place with no locks. Even if that's how they do it in town, not having them at a motel was very strange. I thought about the gun in my bag and how it was only for the night. "Well, thank you for the room," I said, biting my tongue and forcing a smile. The old lady gave me a rotten smile back. "Sweet dreams," she replied, and walked away. I shut the door behind her and took in a deep breath. The musk made me cough again, and I took inventory of the room. There was a bed with a stand on either side and 2 lamps. Across from it was a small writing desk and the door to the bathroom. There were 2 windows by the front door. First, I shut the blinds and drew the curtains. If the door didn't lock, then it was best that nobody knew I was there. Then I took the chair from the desk and wedged it under the door handle until it was stuck in place. Then I finally felt a bit more comfortable. It was about 11 p.m., and I snacked on a granola bar I had packed for the trail. I slowly opened the packaging and cringed at how loud the wrapper was. I watched the dark bathroom like I was trying not to wake something sleeping in the blackness. I finished the bar and tried to sleep. I laid down in the old bed. The sheets made me feel gross, so I laid on top of the bed. The popcorn ceiling spiraled above me. I reached into my bag to look for my mylar blanket. My hand rummaged around my clothes and dehydrated food. The bite of cold steel grazed my hand. My eyes widened, and I retrieved the piece from my bag. I held the gun out in front of me and stared at it. My gaze narrowed. This was the first time that using it became a real possibility. I gripped it and aimed it at the door handle. The sight posts wobbled back and forth as my hand shook. I took a deep breath and stashed the gun under the pillow. As I settled into the bed, I tried to focus on the hike tomorrow and how I would drive straight through on the way back. The rain was still pouring hard outside my window. I could even hear a distant rumble every once in a while. The sound of a motor broke the monotony of the rain, and headlights shone through the cracks in the drapes. I opened my eyes and began to listen closer. The door of a car closed, and the office one opened. The old lady was still in her office and began speaking to whoever had entered. Their voice was deep, but what they were saying was unintelligible. I focused back on the window and the car's headlights and engine that were still on. I pressed my ear to the wall to hear what was said, but they stopped before I could get anything. The office door opened with a chime, and 2 sets of footsteps followed. The splashing of their boots was caught within the thumping of the rain. Their silhouettes passed in front of the car's headlights, casting long shadows into my room. I felt sweat pool on my underlip and quietly removed my covers. I slowly lowered myself to the floor and hid beside the bed. "Please, please," I prayed. "Don't stop walking." The figures passed the window and stopped. I reached over the bed and felt for the pillow. The doorknob turned. The chair stopped them for now. I gripped the gun handle. "Open the door, you little witch!" the old lady shouted. The man shoved the door, and the old chair started to crack. I pulled my revolver in front of me. My hands shook as I checked the safety. A loud crack came from the door. The old chair's back snapped, and the door was open. I looked over the bed, and he was tall, about 6'2", wearing an old hunting jacket and a large bag clamped tightly in his fist. Behind him stood the old lady. He rushed through the doorway, and I raised my revolver. The room lit for a moment, then silence. I looked, and the man was on the ground, and the old lady stood in shock. The old lady started to reach down to her boot. I shot again. I don't know if she was reaching for a weapon, but I didn't know what to do. She was a witness. I doubt the police would believe me over her. I grabbed my bag and stepped quickly over the corpses, gun still in hand. I entered the office and took that logbook with me. There's no way I could report this, so I'm just hoping I got away clean. I was pushing 70 miles per hour through back roads the whole way home, gun in my lap. That night, my Jeep stopped for nobody. My engine was about to overheat as I rolled into my driveway at 3 a.m. I collapsed onto the driveway and threw up on my lawn. Everything I had held in began to come out. Thank God it was as late as it was, so nobody saw their neighbor crying in their yard clutching a pistol. I sniffled and started to regain a bit of composure. The cold of the night was getting to me, and I didn't want to get caught on the lawn. I got my stuff from the Jeep and entered the house. I called some friends and told them I needed them to come over. While I waited, I looked over at the logbook. I wanted to look up that other girl's name to see if anything happened to her. I opened it to the last used page and nearly threw up again. Next to where I signed in, with different handwriting, it said I had signed out tomorrow morning.
Aha! Did you jot that last bit down in your journal of horror hazards? Let's see here. No flashing your high beams on the highway at night. But if someone flashes theirs at you, check your back seat. Watch out for hooks on your car door handle if you've been necking down at Lover's Lane. And here, make sure you double-check the logbook at your motel to ensure you won't be checked out early, if you catch my drift. I love monster stories and tales of fantastic hauntings as much as the next horror host. But sometimes the stories which don't use any fantastic elements at all can creep under your skin. I've never been chased by a werewolf through the woods, but I have had the intrusive, anxious thought that anyone could be prowling around outside my hotel room. And those rooms have more than one key to them, too. I hope exploring that fear gave you a delicious shiver. If you enjoyed this story, please check out the author in the links below. Leave a like on this video and subscribe to hear more stories like this one every week. Let me know in the comments if you have a delicious urban legend to share. Whatever you do, keep one eye on any front door that doesn't lock, and don't fall asleep.